All right, good evening. My phone and computer are both showing 7 o'clock, so I think we can go ahead and get started this evening. Let me just make sure. It looks like we have Mr. Osborne, Mr. Cable, Ms. Ogden, and Ms. Joy. So everyone's here. Thank you. All right, and Madam Superintendent, if you could go ahead and share the pledge on the screen, and if everyone would join us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, and it looks like we're going to start this evening with our reentry plan review.
Well, actually, we've put that on the agenda for every single meeting that we have. And since the last meeting was Thursday night, there's not a whole lot of very new things in the last 2 days of business. However, I did want to let folks know a couple of things. Number one, we are scheduled to release a staff Q&A today. We released the draft to the administrators and some of the teaching staff and service personnel who had submitted questions, and in an attempt to make sure that we answered the questions as they intended and what they actually asked, and we've gotten some feedback, so we're revising that again, and we anticipate sending out the first round shortly. So again, I cannot emphasize enough, every time we release one of these documents, it is based on current information, based on what we know now, and it will change and we will add to it. We also created a special education student section for our reentry plan. That will be pulled down this evening, updated, and reposted for parents of students with disabilities, with some resources and next steps for students with disabilities, and making accommodations for them both in the on-site changed environment and in the virtual environment. We also are pulling in, we had several staff questions about itinerant staff, and we had posted out an original Q&A on that and got some feedback that it was unclear, insufficient. So we're pulling that back out and redoing a section of that. We also have taken the questions that we've been receiving regarding virtual, and as we conveyed previously, we will be sending out an invitation to parents to join in a series of Zoom meetings where we'll do a presentation on virtual, what that looks like, and give them an opportunity to ask questions for that. We looked through the training materials this morning. We did a review with the incomparable Jen Rowan, both answering some of the questions on the staff Q&A about having an electronic repository for lesson plans, having a common accountability reporting mechanism across the county so that teachers did not have to do redundant work for grading and attendance and safety checks for students. So we're integrating that into a single document, posting that. We'll be reviewing some of those things at our principals meeting tomorrow. We meet with all of the principals every Tuesday. We are also continuing to get information in from staff. I actually noticed that one of the folks, Ms. Fluke is here. She had sent us this really great study on an aerosol study on performing arts that has good suggestions in it that we could make some modifications to the performing arts classes so that we can continue to hold those. I would ask for people's patience as we continue to respond to your request. The volume of email is pretty significant right now. I am getting back to everyone. I will also say you are going to get a response first if you sent an email that had content. I know there are some form letters going around that have been created by different associations, and some folks are just hitting forward on that. If you're doing that, you'll get a response that says, thank you very much, we've received this information. But if you ask actual questions pertinent to you, pertinent to your family or your situation as an employee, those we're researching them, we're turning them around. But as I said, it is a bit difficult that we're trying to build this and we're trying to answer everyone's question about what we're building while we're building it. And I thank folks for their patience and their kindness and their ability to manage their own fears as we work through this. We also are developing, the state released on Friday a grant application process. They have $16 million in state funds. They released the grant for application. You can apply for up to $1 million. We actually, after releasing it on Friday, we have a draft plan in place already. It is our intention to turn our application in later on this week to be one of the first school systems to have it in. We are, right now, the plan is to ask for $976,000 worth of both technology equipment and training for staff. One of the things that we are looking at is Holly Fry at Shepherd University contacted us, and we're looking at a partnership with them to get some of their students internship hours with some training to be able to mentor some of our students who in a virtual environment are struggling with some social emotional connection, and we'd like to be proactive before those become mental health issues. So we also released today the funding for conversion for another 1,200 Chromebooks to be able to put into our rotation. And I can say that I honestly see a lot of movement, and I thank people again for their patience. Continue to send those suggestions in. We do have a state superintendent's meeting every Wednesday morning. At the next state superintendent's meeting, we've been told to expect two things. Number one, an actual guidance document on virtual that has not made an appearance previously, and a guidance document on staff movement, staff transfer, staff selection for positions, staff application for accommodations. We do have some guidance in our current staff Q&A, but we also have a couple of questions that we're holding in abeyance until we get that WVDE guidance document. So thank you for that.
Is that all you have? That was quite a mouthful.
Since Thursday night, yes, that's all I got.
Considering the fact that WVU changed their plans as of 3 o'clock this afternoon, we'll see what rolls downhill from that. But, we'll keep our fingers crossed. And just a reminder that even though he said we can't start till September 8th, we have to make sure that we get information out to those dual enrollment students that are enrolled in the university classes off our campus, that their classes will be starting in line with those schools. So,
and we did pose to WVDE explicitly, and they've said they will place it in their Q&A. We asked the question because here our post-secondary partners are starting their classes early, and we've wanted to make sure that because they get both high school and college credit, that their high school credit wouldn't be dependent upon them doing extra work on the back end based on their start date. And we've been assured by Heather Hutchins, who is the WVDE's lead attorney, and Clayton Burt, that will not be the case. So we're pretty confident in that, and I do believe you're going to hear some more from Mr. Dilly a little later on tonight about dual enrollment.
Excellent. All right, thank you. Did you have any other comments in general this evening?
I do also want to update the board on our work to prepare the on-site facility. The intention is that everything is ready for the board to conduct their first August meeting on site. All of the central office staff have been on site for several weeks, and we've been monitoring employee health, and we've had no identified cases. People have been very compliant with the temperature checks and the screening protocol and masks outside of their assigned work area. We have added mics for every single one of the board members because they're going to be socially distanced based on our evaluation of the space from the Jefferson County Health Department guidelines. We will be able to accept up to 8 members of the public to come in and view the meetings live if they wish. We will have on our website a request for someone to be able to click on and request one of those slots, and they'll simply be on a first come, first served basis. And then when they're reached, that will be cut off. We will continue to broadcast these on Zoom so that people continue to have access, but it will become a blended environment of on-site and Zoom.
All right, thank you. Moving along, next we have approval of minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from the regular board meeting held July 13th, 2020, and a special board meeting held June 29th, 2020?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Austin, second.
Thank you, Ms. Ogden, Mr. Osborne. Any question or discussion? All in favor of approving the minutes from the regular board meeting held July 13th, 2020, and the special board meeting held June 29th, 2020?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. All right, citizens' comments. Ms. Harner, I believe we have 2 this evening. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. That's correct. Priscilla Rod and her husband, Dean Kern.
Okay. And Ms. Rod, you'll be up first, and I'm going to go ahead and set my timer here for 3 minutes. And if you could go ahead and make sure you unmute yourself, that would be extremely helpful. All right, hang on, give me 1 second here. I'm used to Ms. Ogden spoiling me and doing this for me. All right, whenever you're ready.
Okay, hello there. My name is Priscilla Rod. Thank you for letting me speak. I'm a Jefferson County parent and a longtime teacher. I'm speaking tonight just to voice my position, which is I want to send my children back to school in person. Most parents that I know want to send their children back. However, in my personal viewpoint and many other people's, I feel like the reopening plan as it stands right now is just too risky for many parents. I know it's said that families can choose the remote option, but I would like my children very much connected with their local friends and their local teachers. Furthermore, I do feel like the point is that the in-person option should be very low risk for children, families, and teachers. And from what I've read, I don't believe that. And I believe that one of the better options would be if we chose an option that combined online learning with staggered student attendance, so that all buses and classrooms are kept around a 50% capacity. Now, to clarify my feelings and my opinions, I'll say that I think it's high risk for various reasons. Number one is the full buses. I would have to depend on a bus. And even if the students are wearing masks, 60 people on a contained environment just feels incredibly dangerous this day and age. Kids yell, they laugh, bus drivers can't closely monitor mask wearing while students are all in there together. It's just unsafe to have full buses. So we need to get those numbers down. Number two, I feel like classrooms with 25 students who aren't wearing masks is just kind of crazy. I mean, I spoke to my cardiologist the other day because I have a heart condition, and she said absolutely not would she send any child into a schoolroom where the students aren't wearing masks. That's just first line of defense. And so I know preschool would be issues, special need kids, there might be exceptions, but I think in a general classroom, children should be wearing masks. I also think the difference in safety between shields and masks needs to be discussed. Right now, they're being discussed interchangeably. I also think a classroom with 25 kids, I've taught a long time, that is not an empty classroom. That is a full classroom. We've seen that students 10 to 18 are just as contagious as adults. So I don't know how we could pretend that that's going to allow for real social distancing. So everyone connected with that community of kids is both a threat and is in danger. And keep in mind that the longer we keep things low risk and the longer we keep outbreaks down, the longer we can stay open. Finally, I want to make a point that much has been said about how the 5-day in-person is to help struggling families. But those struggling families are the ones who are going to have to send their kids on the bus, who are going to take their kids into those classrooms. Those are the ones, therefore, who are going to get the outbreaks. That's what happened in New York City. The most vulnerable communities were the ones who experienced the most sickness because they weren't shutting down like the private school. They weren't doing remote options. So I feel like we have a moral obligation to make our choice in person as low risk as possible. And I know I'm pretty much out of time, right?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. All right.
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
And
And then here's my husband, and he has a different opinion than me. But there you go. That's the household for you.
all right, Mr. Kern, whenever you're ready.
All right. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to talk to you tonight. Let's get away from this. My name is Dean Kern. I've been a school teacher all my life and taught elementary all the way up through college and adult learners. And I'm the parent of 3 kids in Jefferson County. And to be honest, I think that we're wasting energy and resources by working on the details of an in-person option. Instead, as a community, I think we should be working to set up the best possible remote option possible for kids and families. Nearly all of our surrounding counties are choosing to go online because they realize the risk of a COVID spread in our school is just too high. First, let me state the obvious. The virtual option is clearly the safest option, hands down. Just today, the governor announced outbreaks in 8 West Virginia counties linked to church services and other places where people gather. Number 2, when we move into flu season, or even before then, we're going to be sending masses of students home. According to the reopening plan, whenever a student shows COVID symptoms, which are broad, the teacher and students have to stay at home. My wife and kids waited 5 days for their recent test from the county. Imagine this happening over and over again. How can we ensure regular students' attendance and instruction with all these interruptions? If we set up a solid online option now, schools wouldn't have to deal with constant disruption, let alone have to hunt for substitutes willing to come into schools during this risky time. Number 3, students should have online options that are headed up by their local teachers and include their local peers. Students are naturally more invested in classes that have a personal connection, and teachers are more invested in kids who are part of their school community. Furthermore, if local kids took online classes, we could supplement them with small tutorial groups or even arrange for the neediest students to get in-person support in a modified setting. Finally, with the current plan, there are going to be huge amounts of money spent on PPE equipment, cleaning equipment and material, temperature checks, substitutes, and more. By contrast, we could be spending all that money on subscriptions to Schoology, online library subscriptions, to purchase device for students, help families get set up for internet access, and training teachers with online tools and more. The current plan calls for the use of Google Classroom. How is that going to happen when everyone does not have internet access or devices? Although I've heard tonight that it sounds like people are working on that. I think the in-person option is bound to fail. Let's do a 180 and make distance learning as good as it can be. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Moving on to the consent agenda. Are there any changes or updates to the consent agenda?
Yes, ma'am. You will notice that there is a change on number 7 that was originally denoted as an appointment, and it is actually a transfer. And you will note that number 27 has been deleted.
And number 7, you said that was moved from an appointment to a transfer, because I have transfer to transfer.
Yes, ma'am. It was, Ms. Lauren, correct me if I'm wrong. It was originally slated as an appointment and changed to a transfer.
Yeah, we corrected it. It's the online version.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Just to clarify, just a minute, that was number 7 that was that way. Number 27 is actually deleted.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So moved. Ogden.
Ogden. Is there a second?
Second Osborne.
Thank you, Mr. Osborne. Any question or discussion? All right, hearing and seeing none. All in favor of the consent agenda?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Opposed? All right. Moving along to unfinished business. Action on approval of the bid for playground mulch.
Good evening. Tonight, the Operations Department comes before the board to ask for action or approval of the playground mulch bid. We have uploaded the rubric for you, and our recommendation this evening will be to go with R&L Landscaping to do the mulch for this year. I'll take any questions that you have before you vote if you would like.
Why do you think there was such a vast difference in the two prices?
Mark, I knew you were going to ask that. Thank you for that question. I know why there was a difference. We required in the bid that we put in 12 inches of mulch, and the second bidder, or the unsuccessful recommendation, actually wanted to dig out the entire mulch at every playground and replace it with completely new mulch. That went above and beyond the bid, and we felt above and beyond our means. So what we want the mulch dug out to an appropriate level so that we can pack it back in again this year and not replace the entire mulch this year. And then also Brandon wants to inspect that quarterly to make sure that the successful bidder keeps the depth at 12 inches. And as Ms. Ogden suggested prior to the bid, we did recommend a particular brand of mulch. And so both of the landscape companies did provide that quality of mulch for us.
So you feel comfortable that this company is fully aware of the obligation that he has made?
Yes, I actually do. That company was made aware of that in a conversation with Mr. Caton.
Thank you, Ms. White. All right, is there a motion to approve the bid for playground mulch to R&L Landscaping?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Ogden.
Ogden.
Is there a second?
Second Osborne.
Thank you, Mr. Osborne. Any other questions or discussion? All right, hearing none. All in favor of awarding the bid for playground mulch to R&L Landscaping?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. All right, moving on to new business. Action on approval for the addition of dual enrollment courses for Jefferson County Schools. Mr. Daly, is that you?
That's correct. I've come before you this evening to request your approval of dual enrollment courses. This request stems from recent work associated with our post-secondary achievement component of our balanced scorecard. During this work to improve the district's performance and standing on the scorecard, several concerns in calculation and tracking were identified to be common issues across the state. Spurred from these discoveries and work with the districts, the West Virginia Department of Education provided additional guidance and clarity for dual credit bearing courses. This new guidance has prompted our work in aligning college courses with our Jefferson County courses. I have to commend Kathy Farrow and her work with higher education partners, as they have been actively reviewing possible courses to expand opportunities for our students. This work will be ongoing and will continue to seek out board approval for dual credit courses. And tonight we will begin to request and approve History 101, History 102, and Business 101 to add to our existing approved dual credit courses.
All right. Is there a motion to approve those courses?
Osborne, so moved.
Thank you, Mr. Osborne. Is there a second?
Second.
Ogden second. Cable second, or Ogden. Take your pick, Janet.
Okay.
The table. All right. before we vote on, I have a couple quick questions for you, Mr. Dilly. And I've got no issue with having those on the list. My only issue is that History 101 and 102, those are European and ancient history. And so that's what most freshmen and sophomores take in the college track. And then most seniors, they're the ones that are more apt to do the dual enrollment, they're required to do the civics class. Is there any work being done trying to find an equivalent for the civics requirement?
We have reviewed several courses for the civics requirement. Unfortunately, due to some of the specific standards within the civics course and the financial literacy components, it would actually, what it's appearing thus far is that it would actually take 2 college courses to meet those standards to establish it as a dual credit. So right now, we have not been able to come up with a course that matches it to accommodate the civics requirement.
Would it be possible to take one of those courses in the fall and the other one in the spring to equal the whole year of civics?
That is an area that we actually have explored that particular notion, but we haven't worked that out with our partners yet because part of this has just been very recent guidance from the Department of Education within the last few months. So this work's been ongoing, and we are currently going to plan to continue to try to create as many opportunities as we can for our students. So that's one that we're trying to work through, but we just haven't finished yet.
Excellent. I appreciate that. And having personal experience with the dual enrollment program, it's a wonderful, wonderful opportunity for our students because for $25 a credit, they get the college level credit, whether it's at WVU, Potomac State, Blue Ridge, Shepherd. Well, Shepherd, I think, is a different price point, but it's just a great opportunity for our students. So thank you for working toward adding additional classes. Any other question or discussion?
I've got a question real quick about that. Is there a possibility because of that issue that we're looking at, Mr. Dilly, that we can work with WBDE to get civics moved to be able to take it at a different year? If you're a child that is on a path, if you took civics as, you know, and the financial literacy as a 10th or an 11th grader, it still opens you up for that senior year to be able to take a different dual enrollment class. If that's when you're going to offer the dual enrollment, then we need to be able to have as much flexibility in the schedule during the junior and senior years as possible.
Yeah, I will concur with you, and that is a model that we were looking at. Unfortunately, this thing called COVID sort of hit in some of this conversation and planning with our partners, but that is a model of choosing that in their 11th grade years, typically the model that you see across the state for folks to allow them to enter into that coursework sooner so that they can have more flexibility in that senior and junior year. So that's something we will continue to explore. I think from my understanding that the State Department's realizing that the civics is a bit of a barrier, and we're reaching out to, they're reaching out to try to develop some plans for us, but we're still awaiting that guidance on what their thoughts are on accomplishing the civics requirements.
So, I mean, yeah, because obviously I feel like we all agree civics is an important course. But yeah, how we get it in and when we're teaching it, maybe even before senior year, so kids who you know, are taking other classes, or you know, they have 1-2 classes left, 3 at the most, they're able to be able to spend a little bit more time on that and get more of a quality out of that as well. I think is also, and the financial literacy piece could definitely be used before senior year for a lot of kids trying to get a car and have jobs and whatnot. The other piece I was thinking of when you talked about the history, it is an option when you enter 9th grade to take AP World History. So how are we looking at some of those pieces? If I'm looking at my child and I say, oh, okay, I want you to be able to take, you know, for my personal opinion, it was, well, you have to take AP World when you get to freshman year because you need those 3 credits for college. To me, that's a dual enrollment course before you're essentially allowed to take a dual enrollment course. Now, technically, I could have, you know, a child take a placement exam at the college, and as long as they're a high school student, I could do that. So is it still going to be limited, though, that the History 101 and History 102 cannot be taken until junior and senior year? Yet then I might take a high, because to me, it's this, AP World and History 101 and 102. If you only need 2 history courses for a college degree, in many cases, depending on what your major is, how are we working out those details?
Those are some conversations that we're having with our higher education partners, and some of the limitations and challenges have to do with their entrance barriers more than ours. So that's something that we're hoping that as we continue to build a much stronger dialogue with them, that we continue to promote earlier and earlier entrance for those students that are ready and capable to do that. So I think there's some possibilities of doing that, but as of right now, we're limited to some more traditional approaches. So I think as we continue to build and strengthen our partnership with them, we should be able to find ways to be more innovative in allowing some of those students, because there are models out there, and I've developed one in the past where students are able to obtain associate degrees along with their high school diploma. So my hope is as we move forward, we'll continue to be able to find opportunities to accelerate those opportunities for our kids.
Okay,
Because
so
right now we're limited.
I guess what I'm asking is, you're saying that we, meaning our county, I'm thinking if a parent comes to me and says, hey, my child can do this, this, and this, I've taken them over, we've done the placement exams, they're already taking college courses at the college, they're taking them online, and now I have a child, who's also at the high school, are we going to offer the flexibility that they're able to do that? Because in our own protocol and standards, it says you're not able to take a class in dual enrollment unless you're a junior or senior. So are we personally going to be giving the flexibility if the state doesn't want to, change something, or the dual enrollment, again, that's almost a separate issue to me. I mean, it can be done, but we have to see that we need to be flexible enough to do that. And many times I don't hear that from parents, and that's what I want to try to help them, know how to work that around and make them feel like we're obviously we are trying to do the very best we can for their students. So how do we do that? How do we get that message out, and how do we continue to develop that without causing frustration?
And that's a great challenge right now. Obviously, we always battle in organizations a little bit of the way we've always done things. And so we are working through that a little bit as we are attempting to do that. But my hope is our counselors and our principals be more than willing to encourage students to accelerate. But at the same time, if they're having difficulty, I'm happy to step in and assist them. And I'm sure Kathy is as well, Pharaoh, to try to assist and move folks forward. I think again, I'm always under the strong impression of we don't hold students back that are capable of moving faster than we think they are capable of. So I want to make sure that we open those doors as best we can. Obviously, we want to do that in a fair and equitable manner. So I'm happy to try to work through some of those barriers with parents as well in the meantime, until we get a more permanent strategy that's more transparent and clear for parents to walk through.
I have a comment if you're finished. The financial literacy that was mentioned is really just 2 weeks of personal finance, correct? So, so there's many of the free programs that you're familiar with, Next Gen, that may be able to accommodate. So I don't know how much flexibility the school board has in offering those 2 free weeks, because these curriculums are all free and they do much more than a teacher can do in 2 weeks in a civics class anyway. So if we could offer that supplement, maybe in the summer, or the students can take it on their own. I mean, you've seen these programs, correct, Mr. Dilly? Because we've been working on this personal finance for, I've been working for a year trying to get legislators to pass the requirements. So anyway, I just want to let people know that it's really only 2 weeks of instruction. And if we could just hook them up with one of these free online programs, they could accomplish that. Perhaps.
Yeah, and Next Gen Personal Finance does have a lot of free resources out there available for parents and teachers as well. And so I encourage folks to look at that free resource, as many as others. And we've shared that a few times across the district with folks as a possibility, but we'll have to work closely with the State Department to modify any of their requirements outside of what they feel comfortable. So I'm not opposed to what you're suggesting, Dr. Joy, but again, we'll have to make sure that they approve, because we don't want to do anything that would potentially harm a student's ability to graduate from high school.
Yep, I understand. I'm just letting you know that that's possible.
Thank you. And I have one final question, and at the risk of being something thrown at me virtually here, if we have any high school principals or guidance counselors on the Zoom meeting, is it possible for students to sign up for these classes this fall, knowing that they're currently working on the master schedules?
Kathy, I don't know if Kathy Farrow, she's on here. She's probably the one closest to that may be able to answer that response, since there doesn't appear to be any high school principals on.
We're actually working with our colleges right now, as they have deadlines of when students should have already signed up. So they've missed the deadline that they've offered for dual enrollment at this point, but I have reached out to them, and many of them are offering a flexibility. But the problem being then that kids would have to be given that AccuPlacer test to see if they meet the minimum requirements, because they didn't take the SAT or the ACT, or they don't have scores back for, we're trying to work with the different colleges and their requirements. So they're willing to be flexible, it sounds like, but there's still so many unknowns right now with working out the master schedule and moving toward a block, and they're trying to be willing to make their calendars for the dual enrollment align with Jefferson County calendars. And as you know, our calendars needs to be approved as of now. It keeps changing. So it is making things much more challenging for this dual enrollment relationship, but our partners are doing everything they can. I'm staying in touch with them so that we can kind of work side by side, day to day, to how we can make this work.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to approve the addition of the dual enrollment classes listed on the agenda, with a first and a second. Any further discussion or questions? All right, all in favor of approving it?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. All right, action on approval of the revised 2020-2021 calendar.
Or to come back for you again this evening, requesting that you approve the amended calendar to meet the governor's change in our school calendar. And so we just ask that you approve the work that Carol Winnington and her team did in adjusting the calendar to meet all the new requirements.
Okay. And I do have a quick question, which we may not know the answer to yet. And that's the faculty senate days. They're normally a 2-hour delay start or a 2-hour early release. Do we know which way those fall, or is that to be determined depending on the school day schedule?
We are looking, and Dr. Gibson may be able to chime in a little bit here, but we are looking at what options as far as flexibility we may have in that time while still not impeding on that legal requirement. My understanding is we're supposed to be getting some additional guidance, but have not yet received that clarification from the department.
Hey, Kathy, so we can have this discussion. I make a motion, we approve the calendar, the new calendar as stated.
All right, thank you, Ms. Ogden. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Joy. All right, any other discussion or question? Hearing, oh, Ms. Ogden, if you're talking, you're muted.
I was just going to say, I was just waiting for Dr. Gibson. I think she was going to share some things, but I didn't want to, I wanted to get that on the floor so we could talk about it.
Yes, the guidance that we have received verbally from WVDE is that they will not count early release against our accrued instructional time. So currently, the way this calendar is working is that our school day is and has perennially been longer than that what's required by WVDE. And when the law changed 2 years ago, they allow us to accrue that time and utilize it. We were utilizing it for staff development. So now we are utilizing it to be able to get in the 180 days worth of instructional minutes and still be able to have at least some of the family holiday and spring break time that we had previously offered. What they have not conveyed is if they will allow us any other configurations of that. They've just answered the initial question of, if we do the early release, will you count those against us for our school day accrued instructional time? And we just got that answer, so that helps tremendously. But we still need to know how much flexibility that we have in each one of those days. However, the threshold question was whether or not they would ding us on accrued instructional time, and we just got the answer to that, which is they will not.
Well, the important thing for parents to know is that's still an instructional day and the students will still be in school on those days as always.
Absolutely. That, yes, and that we will be able to bank that accrued time in order to meet the requirements so that we can place the holidays in there that have been allocated.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All right.
As I recall, we had pretty minimal staff comments as well. The staff that worked on the calendar seemed pretty, other than the staff development questions or the faculty Senate day question, everything else was okay with them.
Yes, ma'am. Most of what we got and I had conveyed to the board were logistical issues, things like, hey, those holidays aren't written in chronological order that they occur. Well, the state plugs those in and we don't have edit ability on those, so we sent them an email. Or, you color coded this one thing, but you called it something else. And so all of those were things that we corrected within this calendar, but none of them were substantive in terms of, I think you should have the holiday here, or I think you should do this. We did get a question regarding graduation and whether or not the board is required to set a graduation date. They don't have to do it at the same time that they approve the calendar. But Ms. Whittington reviewed and made the inquiry with the Department of Ed, and it looks like May the 23rd, which is a Sunday, is the earliest date under their current guidelines that we could hold graduation. Again, not a decision that has to be made right now, particularly given that we will be running 4 graduations probably for this year's graduate and next year's graduate. So that's a question that you can either put a marker in a weekend for people to, and we're not putting anything in about this year's graduates. That's a special ceremony we have to put in eventually at some point for 2021 graduates. So you can either denote a weekend or you can put in abeyance that decision. That's at the will of the board.
And traditionally, that's Sunday, the 23rd, the Sunday before Memorial Day is when we've been having it.
Yes, ma'am. That would be exactly consistent with the way that we've done it for the last several years, because it allows every single student to attend and not to have to make the decision between representing their school in athletic and extracurricular events or attending their graduation. So it's worked very well, and we have a system in place, and Shepherd University has been very accommodating in that process. So certainly if the board is looking for a recommendation, I certainly think that that would be consistent and appreciated by the staff because they can count on it. People like consistency in planning.
which we've been lacking in the world recently, but all right. So are you suggesting that we put the 23rd as potential graduation date?
I think if you put that in place now for the 2021 graduates, people who make plans really appreciate that, with the understanding that for this year's grads and the special ceremony, you'll have full flexibility to do that. You may do it on a different schedule, or we may end up at the will of the board incorporating it and placing those together somehow. Those aren't decisions that need to be made now, but for the 2021 graduates, yes, barring any other information, there's no way for you to know or I to know what the environment is going to look like May of 2021. I hope we're here. I hope we're shaking people's hands and handing out diplomas. I think that you can state your good intentions, and then as circumstances dictate, we make adjustments.
So can I amend my motion to accept the calendar as approved with adding the 23rd of May 2021 as graduation date?
All right. Thank you, Ms. Ogden. Ms. Joy, do you care to second that?
Okay.
Thank you. All right. So all in favor of approving the calendar?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. All right. Moving on, we have the review and possible action on levy call.
Yes, ma'am. As you are aware, our current levy that supports our staff above and beyond the West Virginia stated minimums, which often includes librarians and art teachers and class production, as well as the recruitment and retention benefits such as vision insurance and dental insurance for employees. Those are all included in that levy, and that levy is set to expire June 30th of 2021. And therefore, we are making the recommendation that the board approve a levy call for the November 2020 election.
All right. And you sent out a draft of that, correct? Were there
Yes,
any?
ma'am. That draft has been up on the website, and we've reviewed it with our staff, various staff groups, as well as meeting with outside entities to get their feedback, community organizations to get their feedback.
All right. Is there a motion to approve the levy call for the November 2020 ballot?
I'll move. Second.
All right, Mr. Cable, Mr. Osborne, thank you. All right, any discussion? I do notice we have 2 new line items on there.
Yes, ma'am. The Jefferson County Health Department that provides all of the immunizations required for students to register in school. As we've stated previously, currently we are at about 35.7% of our student population qualifies for free and reduced lunch, and they often have very limited access to medical care. And if they do not have the state required immunizations, they cannot enroll their students in school. So we have had discussion with the health department as they have amped up their support of those students. There's no funding source for that. And partially that funding source can both ensure that they have on-site immunizations sufficient, as well as the equipment to maintain those for a period of time. And the Jefferson County Parks and Rec has been instrumental in a couple of instances services. They are looking at expanding their offerings for students, particularly underserved populations in the county, through a mobile facility that is a STEAM activity lab. They're actually calling it Steamer, and going into different neighborhoods. Right now, it's called Let's Play, and giving various activities that tie in science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and art with movement. Right now, the latest statistics that we have, which is always surprising to people, is that 16% of our total population meets some criteria of the definition of homelessness. Despite being a very affluent county, there is some pretty significant housing costs here. So the idea being that Parks and Rec would be very supportive of extending our mission into the communities. They've also been very supportive of providing additional services for our staff, for instance, and our families. During the teacher strike, they provided childcare for families in the community so that they can continue to work. We are working with them on a number of initiatives to utilize their facilities heavily for athletics. As our own, we seem to continually be outgrowing them. So those two we felt like were reasonable, supported by the community, and represented an extension of our services into the community that supports families and students.
Right. Thank you. Any other comments or discussion? So this levy call is estimated at $22,412,937 in total. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And one additional piece that you forgot to mention is nurses were also included in this levy call, and they may be slightly important this year.
Yes, ma'am. Very true.
All right. So we have a motion to approve the levy call for the November 2020 ballot. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you very much. And do we have an executive session this evening?
No, ma'am.
All right. Well, that was a pretty quick meeting tonight.
Can I just ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Or even just make a comment? We had talked earlier about, and looking at our updates and whatnot, and the fact that we're looking to get some more one-to-one devices. I just want to see if we can continue to push that piece of looking at, I know, Mr. Dillon, we had even talked earlier about having our own staff do different videos, and how could we do that, and how can we get our staff to do that. And I know that we do keep hearing that. I know that that is our goal. I know with looking at a Google Classroom environment, whether we have a snow day or, no matter what, we are going to have the need to figure out how to be successful at virtual education long-term, no matter how it looks. This is not going to go away, whether it is the flu next year or COVID-21 next year, God forbid, or who else knows what it is. But figuring out a way to divide up the content standards across the county, allowing staff to make those content videos, uploading those on there so that there is no loss of instruction, or it is not dependent upon whether a teacher is out because they have a COVID symptom, even if they don't have it, or no matter what, or a child is out because they've been exposed somewhere. That way we are able to provide consistent content standard instruction no matter what. It's all of our own staff. It's all of our own content standards. There's nothing else. I don't know what the cost of that would be. I don't know how many IT technicians we need to hire to get them in here to do all those videos. I don't know how many people we need to train, or volunteers or business partners we need to bring in to make sure we get it done, or students, frankly. Some of those AV video, the students can do TikTok videos and kill it. So I guarantee you they could do an amazing job videotaping our staff. But whatever the case needs to be, I really think that we need to spend our time assuming that that is where we are going. If we don't, and we get to come in and show up, that's great. Next year, if something happened, or if a student is sick and misses a day, guess what? There's no missing a day anymore. You have your stuff available to you. If you don't have internet and whatnot, obviously those are other issues, but those are a lot less of an issue than not having anything at all. We can address those other issues by being able to help them in another way. And I feel like if we do not look at the issue that is where we're going to be right now and start to make those changes accordingly, we're still going to be scrambling with how the value of the education is delivered, because there's a lot of fear and unknown, and that's understandable, because kids are at a lot less risk than the staff, and I get that. So that's where I feel really confident that we need to look at somehow being able to do that where they're involved and doing that. Even if they're 2 or 3 weeks, they get 2 or 3 weeks done, and then when they're in school and everybody else is home because we have no choice, the teaching will take less time because they've already got the videos done while they're working on the next set. So I'm not really sure how that might need to look, but if we could try to look at brainstorming that, even with staff, some ideas that they may have with it, and come up with some sort of another plan. That's just my thought. Anyway.
No, if I can respond to that, that's the work we've actually been doing the last couple of weeks. A large percentage of that, as we've completed the initial drafts of the grand plan for returning to work, we knew the reality and would be that even with us returning potentially 5 days a week, we would have a percentage of our staff, or excuse me, families reporting or requesting a virtual learning environment. So we are in the process of doing a lot of the work you've just described. I would have thought you were sitting in some of my team meetings here recently, because that's a large percentage of the conversation, as well as we know that no matter what concludes after this year and in a post-pandemic world, we know that I think a number or percentage of our families are going to continue to want to have the flexibility of some sort of a virtual learning environment. And our hope is that we can incorporate our own staff in developing those options, as well as delivering those options, because we know that is, as mentioned earlier by the gentleman, that's really the best option as far as we're concerned. But a lot of that depends on the numbers, as you all know, with enrollments and things like that. But from preliminary evidence, we think there are going to be enough to try to offer some sort of a good quality example. And some of the work that has been going on is that repository of lesson plans, and that's going to be some of our main PD work in the first couple of weeks coming back. So we'll be expanding that with all of the staff to try to build lessons and make things available for people across the system. But one of the other components that we also are working on and developing is the support parts of this. Technology is new for a lot of folks, including students. And so we're also looking at this not only from a staff perspective of training, but also for our families as well as our students. And our hope is we can actually have students leading some of that development for their peers. And so we're looking at models and approaches to possibly help let our own students lead some of that training and development. It's going to be probably a year-long process, but our goal commitment is to develop a high-quality virtual learning environment that's going to support Jefferson County for years to come.
Thank you very much. Any other board member comments? All right. Everybody have a great evening. Thank you very much.